Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. It is fantastic to have you here. As you know, we're working on my first ever folding knife. So, let's get to it. I'm gonna grind the blade. I've got the edge ground in up to 240 grit. Now I'm gonna cut out the little flipper and angle grind out and then grind out what it was that we weren't able to mill out of there. So after a lot of filing work to get that little radius there where that's got to pivot through to the right kind of dimensions, I hope, and after using that little Fordham, it's like a Dremel-like thing, I saw Simple Little Life use one, and you remember, of course, I made a piece of steel for Simple Little Life. I think he's been very busy, and hopefully he's eventually going to make himself a folding knife from that Damascus steel. So anyway, I got the idea of using a Fordham from Simple Little Life. I ended up getting myself one a few months ago. It's the first time I've used it, and I just went in there with a little bit of a diamond bit. I just kind of got these radiuses here all nicely finished up. And now, of course, it is on to the most important part of a knife, which arguably, or one of the most important parts, which arguably is the heat treat, because if this is not hard and if this is not tempered correctly, then it's just any old piece of steel and it might as well be butter. So as you can see, I've got two things in the forge right now. I have one big old lump of metal and I have a piece of pipe. Now, of course, you'll be familiar with why it is that I have a piece of pipe in there. The piece of pipe in there is so you can get a really nice, even heat on the blade. And the big lump of metal is so that I can warm up the oil so that we can get a faster quench and hopefully make this just harden up absolutely fantastically. So the first step, of course, is a normalization cycle. So there we go, normalizing cycle number 1. Cycle number 2. And now into the quench. Give it a shake, break the Leidenfrost effect. Woohoo! Looks beautiful. Martensite is always a good thing. That's that gray that you see, I believe. I'm gonna wipe off the excess oil because right now what I'm gonna go and do is I'm gonna go into my oven and you'll see I have a pyrometer stuck into it. It is reading 199 degrees Celsius, which is 389 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just exactly what we need to temper this blade fabulously. In she goes. Shut the door. Throw the pyrometer back in it. I'm gonna keep coming back in here and checking the temperature there so it's not getting too hot, not getting too cold, and I'm gonna leave it in there for 2 hours, because it's always good to get a nice long tempering cycle, always helps things be a little bit better. And the great thing is that in those 2 hours, that leaves me some time to continue working on the other parts of this folding knife. We of course have already drilled the holes for the spacer, this just needs to be cut out. But before I cut that out, I believe I want to work on the scales themselves. Now I think I'm just gonna go right ahead and use these little bits of 3mm steel. This happens to indeed be some 15N20, so it's one of the steels that I make the Damascus with. And since I don't have any 3mm mild steel, I guess I'm gonna use that. The toss-up was between copper, which I had in 1.5mm, but I'm saving for another fun series of projects, or even some nickel. Now I wonder why I'd have copper and nickel. We'll see in the future. But I ended up deciding on this thicker, stiffer, and of course it's steel, means it's an all steel build, aside from some of the pins that we're gonna be using. And I think that's gonna help continue this nice kind of minimalistic theme that we've got going here. I think it's gonna look really, really slick. Now first things first, so I can really help with my accuracy and make sure that when we do end up going onto the mill and drilling, all the holes are in the exact same place as the spacer. I am going to tack weld these two pieces of steel together in an area that'll end up being cut off. I'm then going to grind a very nice square 90-degree corner that we can work off from. And then the whole assembly of the two pieces can then go into the milling machine. We can drill the holes while it's welded together, cut it apart, the two pieces will fall in half. I can then finish off the rest of the pieces individually. Hopefully, this is a good way to get it all done. So I have these scales all finished up. I have the edges slightly radius. I have a nice rounded end here. They both match very nicely. And now it is time for me to start working on this blade again. I am going to take this all the way up to an 800 grit finish. Then we're going to do some hand sanding, and then this puppy should be ready for an etch. Oh, actually, no, wrong. Oh well, I'm going to grind it, and then we'll work out what happens from there. Okay, the blade is ground. I'm now going to cut out and shape the spacer that we drilled the holes in yesterday. It is starting to come together. Here is the spacer. This has been ground all the way up to 800 grit. This is very exciting. The blade has been ground to 800 grit. We have the scales. I can use these drill bits as little spacers. Interestingly enough, 4mm drill bit I used to drill that hole. That hole is a lot bigger than that, so I'm going to have to custom make a pin. But I can still use the drill bits as spacers for us to now examine exactly how much whittling of that little cutout there it is that I need to do to get this to open and close the perfect amount. Can I just say, this is just so exciting. This, I'm making this thing pivots. It's a folding knife. I just need to, I could assemble this and it would already be there. So, this needs to come down more here, which means I need to remove material in there. And when I close it, I am going to want this to close further, a little closer up to this spacer. And so, in addition, I'm going to whittle away a little more there. Okay, so now I've got it just about perfect. When I open it up, that little tang area there is perfectly flush with the backside. When I close it, it closes just enough, but not too much. Now what I've got to do is hand sand and etch the blade. So it's now time for a little hand sanding. A little nail polish. Since that edge is so thin and so close to being fully formed, I want to make sure that we can protect it from being etched by the acid. I'm gonna gently... There we go. And so, of course, I have polished and degreased our spacer, which means that both the spacer and the blade are ready to go into the ferric chloride for the etch. I'm gonna check there's no oil on any of these parts. That is looking just super duper beautiful. Outstanding. In we go. And with that, I am going to let that etch, and then I'm gonna pull it out, and I'm gonna do that little sodium hydroxide trick. I'm gonna leave it in some of that overnight, see if that really helps get that nice contrast that we like. That'll also neutralize the acid. And ladies and gentlemen, to see this incredible pattern and see this project continue, please do make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, drop a like, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow on the next episode. Bye-bye.